maybe the most important thing that was sort of said publicly, Warriors related today, I think came from our good friend Anthony Slater on ESPN, who sort of did a what you need to know about the Warriors before this all gets started, and seemingly threw a different pitch with regard to Draymond Green.
Right, and the pitch is yet to be thrown, but they're signaling, maybe it's PitchCom, and they're signaling what that pitch is likely going to be. And it feels like if nothing can be done by him taking a one-year deal and making it two, in other words, if they can't use that financial break this year to do something significant, well, then both sides are kind of resigned to the reality that he'll just come back, pick up his option, and be a Warrior one more year or one more day or 4 more months or maybe one more year and then he signs again after that. But if he plays under $27 million, it is a much more flexible contract for the Warriors.
Yeah. Don't you think it represents something a lot more than that? I get what you're saying. You're not wrong. So there's the 1 year, there's the 2 year. As I was just talking about, the only reason for the Warriors to do this decline and sign 2-year thing with Draymond, there has to be a corresponding move that makes that reasonable.
Right.
Like, why? You're not going to just do this because you're like, we really like Draymond Green. I don't think Mike Dunleavy's going to operate that way. I don't think they're that flimsy. You don't just do it for the sake of doing it. There has to be a reason. And in the absence of reason, what the Warriors are saying is, no, just pick up your option. And then if that means that you're no longer a Warrior after this year, or by the way, if it means you're not a Warrior this year, then doesn't that fit in the sentence that he said 12 times today? Everything's on the table?
It does, yeah. And part of the Anthony Slater article was talking about how sources told Anthony that they were really impressed with how Draymond handled the trade deadline last year with his name being thrown out there. And all we heard from Mike Dunleavy last year was a very defiant no. His name wasn't thrown out there, and yet source report from Slate's today is talking about how some within the organization are really proud of the way he handled it. So, yeah, you can listen to all the things Mike Dunleavy said today and Matt Chapman yesterday talking about the no-trade clause. And it's not so much that these people are lying, because lying is such a harsh and dirty word.
They're kind of lying.
Yes, but it's not their job to give us the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Like, I think it's lying all within an honest space.
The context of their job.
Yeah.
He's supposed to lie.
Like, I mean, I do think there are questions that get asked of them where they have a choice. They can either lie a little bit, fib, white lie, whatever you want to call it, or they can look all of us directly in the eye and go, I'm not answering that. Which is wholly unsatisfying and kind of sets off a whole different tone to the whole thing. It sets everybody off like, hey, what's going on here?
Why even show up to the press conference if you're not going to answer anything?
If you get evasive and it sounds sort of like you're terse, then that's going to rub people the wrong way. But then, this is the yin-yang that we do. So does brutal honesty. Brutal honesty rubs us the wrong way, too. Steve Wilkes knows he messed up. Oh, God. Oh, my God. You jerk. So
I can honestly say I'm sort of built for this.
They get stuck. They get stuck, and that's why, yeah, you're right. The lying to a degree it's acceptable.
Right, and today he talked about all options open and all the rest of it. The one thing I am thinking more and more about, and you and I talked about it before the show, is clearing the books. And so if you have Draymond on a 2-year deal for $40 million, 19 this year, 21 next, whatever the number would be, that is going to be on the books. And you mentioned it before. Right now you got Moses and you've got Gee and you've got Will Richard in italics, which means it's not guaranteed.
Not guaranteed, yeah.
So your books going into not this coming season, but the one after, wide open.
They're like your dome, dude. They're clean.
Yeah. It'll be cleaner tomorrow.
Clean.
Tomorrow's a haircut day.
It's still pretty clean.
But, if that's what they want is, roster flexibility, not this year, but next, well, then you probably don't want to give Draymond Green an extra year yet.
Here's Dunleavy, what he said today. Draymond and Porzingis. This is what he said at the press conference.
Yeah, I think, now with, I can't remember when the rules change, but there's stuff opens up where we can talk to our own players sooner, which is nice. I mean, just to get that going. But I've had conversations with, kind of all of our free agents, the representatives. I think we're in a good place with all of them. Lots of good players, but as far as Draymond and KP, Draymond's got the player option, but we're in communication with his group. And then same thing with KP, and both guys I think we value, we want here, and we see them as a kind of a piece of the puzzle next season.
Okay. And I don't think he's lying, but I also think it might not go that way. It might not go that way. Like, I tell you what, in about 10 minutes, after reading everything and listening to everything today, I put together what, for me, just as a fan, I'm one fan, what the absolute dream offseason is for the Golden State Warriors. I will freely admit, probably won't happen. I don't think the dream scenario usually does, but I tell you what, I've got the dream scenario, and the only teaser I'll give you is that if Draymond Green just does a simple opt into the contract, then Draymond Green becomes a very tradable, expiring deal.
Yep. And I'm not sure if that would be something you could do now or if it's more likely at the deadline, but you certainly would think about trying to do it now. And I believe that the deadline is June 29th for
That's
Draymond
correct.
Green
That is accurate.
to make that decision. So between now and then, he'll talk to Draymond's people, and Draymond will have his people talk to Dunleavy and his people, various Lakers. And before the 29th, though, there's a draft. And so if the Warriors do want to draft at 11, they might draft a player and trade that player along with Draymond Green for somebody between, I don't know, July 4th and the start of the year.
Well, I mean, all in all, Mike Dunleavy today kept his cards close to the vest, as he should. Do you know what I mean? And so I think what everybody, you tell me if I'm wrong on this, what everybody really wants to access is, hey, Warriors, what's your philosophy for the offseason? It's not what move are you going to make and are you going to draft the player? Are you going to make a trade? I think what we're looking for is some sort of philosophical answer. And what I mean by that is, are you going to aggressively this offseason be about this season? Or are you going to aggressively this offseason be about the larger picture? And I think he kept all of his cards closed. And so sure, all options are on the table. But I certainly got the vibe from him that if he was going to answer that question fully honestly, I would say that this offseason, they're prioritizing the bigger picture.
Right.
They are not everything for Steph this year. I don't think that is their philosophy.
Now, I'm just reading from the Slater piece, and the second paragraph is something that was sourced from the front office, and it's referring to Steve Kerr, who reportedly said, don't mortgage the future for the present. Don't throw around first-round picks for marginal upgrades. Mm-hmm. So there are players out there who might not be marginal upgrades, but you may have to throw around first-round picks to bring those players in, assuming you can take Draymond Green and package him, or Jimmy Butler and package him. You may have to throw around first-round picks, but to your point about the philosophy, it feels that the philosophy is more about, doing everything you can now. You use the pick, you bring back Kristaps, you try to make some maneuvers to get your team a little bit better. You get to the deadline, and maybe you can do something with Jimmy's contract, but you don't mortgage the future with your picks, and you see what you can do. Mm-hmm. You clear the books for next year, and maybe next year is actually the last dance.
Well, I mean, and I think this was in the Slater piece as well. What is sort of evident to me is that the Warriors very, very much, they are prioritizing that financial flexibility that they have after the upcoming season. And certainly a Steph Curry extension is one thing that they will rope into that. But outside of that, Moody's deal and Guy Santos' deal, that's it. And that's nothing. That's less than $20 million.
Yep.
So that's no big deal at all. Do you put a Steph extension in on there? Sure. Is it 50? Is it 60? Is it 40? I don't know, and I don't care, quite frankly. But after that, that's where the whole Draymond question comes in. That's where the idea of Anthony Davis comes in. And I tell you what, to read Slater's piece, to listen to Dunleavy on 2 different interviews today, Anthony Davis's name never even came up. And I know they wouldn't ask him directly about it because you can't say anything about it on June 17th. But I look at the names that did come up in Slater's article, and Anthony Davis was not one of them. And I don't believe that is the Warriors' philosophy. What was stated by Bleacher Report yesterday is, this is an obvious move for the Warriors because they've got to have a good player next to Steph Curry on
obvious
opening
move for
night.
the Warriors.
Yeah. No.
How about for the Wizards?
It doesn't even matter.
Right.
I disagree. I think the Warriors disagree. I don't think they think it's an obvious move. I think they think it's a terrible move.
Well, I don't think that there are any obvious moves at that level. And in the piece, he talks about the LeBron James situation. And, many reports now indicate that he's much more likely to stay in L.A.
For sure. Yep.
The Clippers aren't trading Kawhi Leonard to the Warriors. The Warriors were knocking on that door at the deadline last year. And the reports are that Steve Ballmer picked up the phone and said, no, we're not doing that. We're not trading him there. They still want to build around him. And if the Anthony Davis move is dead on arrival, and if Giannis is going to either Miami or Boston, what are we looking at?
Well, the Giannis thing to me is the clearest sign of how the organizational philosophy has changed. In February of 2026, the Warriors were willing to give 4 future firsts for Giannis. In June of 2026, they don't even want in on the conversation.
Right. That's 4 months.
They don't even want to call. They're not interested in getting into the Giannis conversation. This is a big deal. I mean, think about where this town has been for 3 years and what we've talked about with this organization.
Big game hunting.
Big game hunting. No, not anymore.
And I think that the Jimmy ACL injury might be the ultimate pendulum swing, the tipping point on all this, because if you had Jimmy Butler for one more year, you might be more motivated to bring in a third really good player. But with Jimmy out until February or maybe longer, I think you have to pivot.